pregnant woman feels movement, delivers a living crystal baby. How is this even possible? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. Clara lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above her. It was late, and the soft hum of the blades was the only sound in the otherwise silent house. The weight of her growing belly pressed against her ribs, making it difficult to find a comfortable position. She shifted again, trying to ease the dull ache in her back. Pregnancy wasn't new to her. This was her second child, but this time, things felt different. She sighed, resting a hand on her belly. The baby kicked lightly in response, the familiar flutter that usually brought a smile to her face. But tonight, the movement wasn't quite the same. It was stronger, more deliberate, and oddly rhythmic. A strange warmth radiated from her abdomen, as if the baby's tiny feet were pressing against her with purpose. Then it happened again, another wave of warmth. This time, Clara froze. The sensation wasn't painful, but it wasn't normal either. Her brow furrowed as she tried to make sense of it. "That's new," she muttered under her breath, her fingers tracing the outline of her belly. The warmth spread upward, a gentle pulse that seemed to sync with her heartbeat. She reached for her phone on the nightstand, hesitating for a moment before dialing her husband, Alex, who was working late at the hospital. As a nurse, he often reassured her about the normal ups and downs of pregnancy. Surely he would have a logical explanation for this. "Hey babe," Alex's voice came through, tired but warm. "Alex, something weird is happening," Clara began, her voice low. "The baby, it feels different tonight. Like it's moving in this pattern. And there's this heat. I don't know how to describe it." There was a pause on the other end, and Clara could hear Alex exhale deeply. "It's probably just the baby adjusting, maybe pushing against a nerve. You've been stressed lately too. It could be making you more sensitive." Clara frowned, unconvinced. "I don't think it's stress. It feels, I don't know, intentional." "Intentional?" Alex chuckled lightly. "Babies don't plan their movements, Claire. It's all instinct. Try not to overthink it, okay? Get some rest, and I'll check in on you first thing in the morning." "Okay," she said softly, though her unease lingered. She hung up and set the phone back on the nightstand, her hand drifting once more to her belly. The warmth had subsided, but the memory of it remained, etched into her skin like a ghostly imprint. Clara spent the rest of the night tossing and turning, her mind racing with possibilities. By morning, the glow of sunlight streaming through the curtains did little to ease her worries. Alex returned home, his brow furrowing as he examined her with a practiced gaze. "You don't look like you got much sleep," he said, sitting beside her on the bed. "I couldn't stop thinking about it," Clara admitted. "What if something's wrong with the baby?" Alex reached out, his hand gentle on her shoulder. "Let's get you checked out. If it'll put your mind at ease, we can do an ultrasound today." Clara nodded, grateful for his support. A few hours later, they were seated in the clinic, the familiar whir of the ultrasound machine filling the small room. The technician, a young woman with kind eyes, smiled as she prepped Clara's belly with cool gel. "Let's take a look," she said, moving the transducer over Clara's abdomen. The black and white image flickered to life on the screen, revealing the tiny form of their baby nestled within. "There's your little one," the technician said cheerfully. "Heartbeat looks strong. Measurements are on track, everything seems normal." Clara let out a small sigh of relief, but her eyes remained fixed on the screen. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was being overlooked. "Are you sure?" she pressed. "Nothing unusual at all?" The technician hesitated, her gaze flicking to a faint distortion on the screen. It was barely noticeable, a shimmer that appeared and disappeared in an instant. "Well, there's a bit of interference, but that can happen with these machines. It's likely nothing to worry about." Clara's unease deepened. "Interference?" "Sometimes the machine picks up stray signals, cell phones, radio frequencies. It's rare but harmless." The technician offered a reassuring smile, but Clara could sense the underlying uncertainty in her voice. As they left the clinic, Alex tried to comfort her. "See? Everything's fine. The baby's healthy. You just need to trust the process." Clara nodded absently, her thoughts elsewhere. That night, the strange warmth returned, stronger than before. This time, it was accompanied by a faint glow emanating from her skin. Clara stared in disbelief as the soft light pulsed from her belly, illuminating the darkened room. She placed her hands over the glow, feeling its gentle heat beneath her palms. "Alex," she called, her voice trembling. He rushed into the room, his eyes widening as he saw the glow. What is that?" "I don't know," Clara cried. "It just started." Alex crouched beside her, his hand hovering over the light. "It's warm," he murmured, his voice tinged with awe. "But it's not burning you. What could cause this?" Clara shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know. Alex, I'm scared." He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close as the glow began to fade. "We'll figure this out," he promised. "I'll do some research, reach out to specialists if I have to. You're not alone in this." In the days that followed, Clara's symptoms became increasingly bizarre. Her skin would shimmer faintly in sunlight, and she began to experience vivid dreams of crystalline landscapes. The dreams were so real that she would wake up feeling as though she'd walked through those glittering terrains herself. One afternoon, while shopping for baby clothes at a local market, Clara encountered an elderly woman who seemed to recognize her. The woman's eyes widened as she approached, her gnarled hands clutching a wooden cane. "You," the woman said, her voice quivering. "You carry a child of light?" Clara froze, unsure of how to respond. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" The woman shook her head. "No, but I know what you are. Your child isn't of this world." The cryptic words sent a shiver down Clara's spine. Before she could ask more, the woman turned and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Clara standing there, bewildered and alone. When she told Alex about the encounter that evening, he dismissed it as the ramblings of a stranger. "People say weird things all the time," he said, trying to lighten the mood. "Don't let it get to you." But Clara couldn't shake the feeling that the woman's words held some truth. As she lay in bed that night, the rhythmic movements in her belly returned, stronger than ever. The warmth spread through her body like a gentle tide, and for the first time, Clara felt a strange sense of peace. Whatever was happening, it was beyond her understanding, but deep down, she knew it was only the beginning. The days passed with Clara caught in a whirlwind of unease and wonder. The strange glow that emanated from her belly had become a regular occurrence, though it was unpredictable. It would appear at the most unexpected times, while she was cooking, sitting in the backyard, or even in the middle of a conversation with Alex. Each time, the warmth and light felt soothing, almost like a protective embrace, but it only deepened her questions. Alex spent his nights poring over medical journals and reaching out to his colleagues for insights. None of them had ever encountered anything like Clara's condition, but the absence of negative symptoms seemed to reassure him. "You're healthy, the baby's healthy," he would say, though even his tone carried traces of doubt. "That's what matters." Clara tried to focus on those words, to hold on to the thought that her baby was fine. Yet, the strange dreams persisted, growing more vivid with each passing night. She found herself wandering through landscapes made entirely of crystalline structures, towers of shimmering blue and green, rivers that sparkled like molten glass, and skies that radiated a gentle, golden glow. The air in these dreams was cool and light, filled with a hum that seemed to resonate deep within her chest. One night, Clara found herself standing at the base of a towering crystal spire. It stretched so high into the sky that she couldn't see its peak. She reached out to touch it, her fingers grazing the smooth surface. The spire seemed to pulse under her touch, sending a wave of warmth through her body. A voice, soft, melodic, and unfamiliar, whispered in her mind. Soon, Clara woke with a start, her hand pressed against her belly. The room was dark, the glow from her skin faint but unmistakable. She sat up, her heart pounding, and whispered, "What's happening to me?" The following morning, Alex suggested they visit another specialist, this time a renowned obstetrician who dealt with high-risk pregnancies. "It's just to be safe," he said as they drove to the clinic. "This guy's seen everything. If anyone can explain what's happening, it's him." The obstetrician, Dr. Howard, was an older man with a kind smile and a calming demeanor. He listened intently as Clara described her symptoms, his pen moving steadily across his notepad. When she mentioned the glowing, however, he paused, his brow furrowing. Glowing skin, he repeated as if testing the words on his tongue. And you say this happens sporadically? Yes, Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper. It's not painful, but it's strange. Dr. Howard nodded thoughtfully. Let's do an ultrasound. It's always best to see what's going on. As Clara lay back on the examination table, Alex held her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. The gel was cold against her skin as the technician moved the transducer across her belly. The screen flickered to life, revealing the familiar silhouette of their baby. There's your little one, Dr. Howard said, his tone warm. But his expression shifted as he leaned closer to the screen. What's this? What is it? Alex asked, his voice tense. Dr. Howard pointed to a faint shimmer surrounding the baby's form. It was subtle, barely visible, but undeniable. There's some kind of energy field here, he said, his voice filled with both curiosity and concern. I've never seen anything like it. Clara's heart raced as she stared at the screen. The shimmer pulsed gently, almost in rhythm with her own heartbeat. Is the baby okay? She asked, her voice trembling. The baby appears healthy, Dr. Howard said after a long pause. But this is beyond anything I've encountered. I'd like to consult with a colleague who specializes in rare phenomena. As they left the clinic, Clara felt both relieved and more confused than ever. The baby was healthy, she clung to that, but the mystery of the shimmer haunted her thoughts. Alex tried to stay optimistic, but she could see the worry etched into his features. That evening, as they sat in the living room, the news broke. A video taken by an anonymous hospital worker had been leaked online, showing Clara's glowing belly during one of her earlier visits. The footage spread like wildfire, and within hours, their home was surrounded by reporters and onlookers. This is insane, Alex muttered as he pulled the curtains shut. How did this even get out? Clara sank onto the couch, her hands trembling. What do we do now? We stay calm, Alex said, though his voice wavered. I'll talk to the hospital, find out how this happened. The phone rang incessantly, calls from journalists, curious strangers, and even scientists hoping to study Clara's case. She felt like a spectacle, her once private life now exposed for the world to see. The stress was overwhelming, and the glow from her belly grew more frequent, as if reacting to her emotions. In the midst of the chaos, Clara received an email from a man claiming to have information about her condition. His name was Dr. Adrian Voss, and he introduced himself as a physicist who had studied unexplained energy phenomena for decades. His message was brief but compelling. I believe I know what's happening to you. Your child may be connected to something ancient. Please meet me, I can help. Against Alex's protests, Clara decided to meet Dr. Voss in a public place, a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town. The man who greeted her was tall and thin, with sharp features and an intense gaze. He carried a worn leather briefcase and spoke with a quiet urgency. Mrs. Hart, he said, shaking her hand. Thank you for trusting me. I'm not sure I do, Clara admitted, sitting across from him. But I need answers. Dr. Voss opened his briefcase, pulling out a thick, leather-bound journal. What you're experiencing isn't unprecedented, he began. There are ancient records, if you will, that speak of children born with extraordinary energy. They were seen as harbingers of change, their very existence capable of altering the course of humanity. Clara stared at him, her mind reeling. What are you saying? That my baby is some kind of prophecy? Dr. Voss nodded solemnly. Perhaps. The energy field surrounding your child is unlike anything in modern science, but it aligns with descriptions found in ancient texts. These children were said to be both a blessing and a curse, depending on how their power was nurtured or exploited. Clara felt a chill run down her spine. Exploited? There will be those who see your child as a tool, a means to an end, Dr. Voss said. You must protect them at all costs. When Clara returned home, she shared Dr. Voss's words with Alex, who was understandably skeptical. This sounds like conspiracy nonsense, he said, pacing the living room. We can't base decisions on myths and fairy tales. But what if he's right? Clara countered. What if this isn't just about us? What if this baby is meant for something bigger? Alex sighed, running a hand through his hair. I just want to keep you and the baby safe, Clara. That's all that matters to me. Clara nodded, though her thoughts were far from settled. That night, she dreamed of the crystal spire again, its pulsing light brighter than ever. The voice returned, clearer this time. Protect the child. The world is not ready. She woke with a start, her heart pounding and her belly glowing brightly. The warmth was stronger than ever, radiating through her entire body. Alex woke beside her, his eyes widening as he took in the sight. Clara, he whispered. What's happening? I think it's coming, she said, her voice trembling. The baby, it's almost time. The morning sun rose quietly, casting a golden light across their home, but Clara could hardly appreciate it. The glow from her belly had persisted through the night, radiating warmth and pulsing gently as if in tune with an unearthly rhythm. Alex stayed by her side, his worry etched deeply into the lines of his face. They hadn't spoken much since Clara's revelation the night before, that the baby's arrival was imminent. Neither of them knew what to expect. Do you feel any pain? Alex asked softly, brushing a stray lock of hair from her forehead. Clara shook her head. No pain, just this light. It feels stronger than before. Alex frowned, his mind racing. We should go to the hospital. You might need medical attention. I don't think they can help me, Clara replied, her voice trembling. What's happening isn't something they're equipped to handle. Alex opened his mouth to argue, but the sound of their doorbell interrupted him. They exchanged a glance, and Alex rose to answer it. He peered through the peephole, his expression tightening as he saw the crowd gathered on their front lawn, reporters, curious onlookers, and even a few self-proclaimed spiritualists clutching crystals and chanting softly. Unbelievable, Alex muttered under his breath. He turned back to Clara. It's getting out of hand out there. Clara felt a pang of guilt. This wasn't just her burden anymore. It had consumed their lives. We need to leave, she said suddenly. Somewhere quiet, somewhere safe. Alex hesitated. Where would we go? Clara thought of the secluded cabin her parents had owned when she was a child, tucked away in the woods far from prying eyes. The cabin, she said. It's isolated. No one will find us there. Alex nodded. But let's pack a few things and head out. I'll handle the crowd. While Alex distracted the onlookers by pretending to give a statement at the door, Clara gathered their essentials, clothes, food, and the baby supplies they had carefully prepared over the past months. She moved quickly, her hands trembling as the glow from her belly lit up the dim corners of their home. By the time they left through the back door, Clara's heart was racing. The cabin was a 2-hour drive away, but every mile felt like an eternity. The glow grew stronger as they neared their destination, filling the car with a soft, golden light that reflected off the windshield. Clara rested her hands on her belly, feeling the warmth spread through her body. It's okay, she whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was reassuring herself or the child growing inside her. We're almost there. When they arrived at the cabin, Clara felt an overwhelming sense of relief. The familiar scent of pine trees and the sound of birdsong brought back memories of her childhood, a simpler time before her life had been consumed by mystery and uncertainty. Alex helped her inside, his protective instincts kicking into high gear as he checked every window and locked every door. This'll work, he said, more to himself than to her. No one will bother us here. Clara nodded, sinking into the worn couch with a sigh. The glow from her belly had dimmed slightly, but the rhythmic pulse remained. She closed her eyes, exhaustion washing over her. Hours passed in relative peace, but Clara couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was approaching. She felt it in her bones, in the very air around her. It was as if the world was holding its breath, waiting. As night fell, the pulsing light returned with renewed intensity. Clara woke with a start, clutching her belly as a wave of energy surged through her. Alex, she gasped, her voice trembling. He was at her side in an instant, his eyes wide with concern. What's wrong? I think it's time, Clara said, tears streaming down her face. The baby, it's coming. Alex didn't hesitate. He had prepared for this moment, despite the strangeness surrounding it. He helped Clara to her feet and guided her to the bedroom they had set up as a makeshift delivery room. The glow from her belly illuminated the space, casting shifting patterns of light on the walls. Clara lay back on the bed, her breathing shallow as another wave of energy coursed through her. It wasn't pain, not like the labor she remembered from her first pregnancy. This was something else entirely. Her body felt weightless, as if she were floating on a sea of light. Alex knelt beside her, his hands trembling as he wiped the sweat from her brow. "You're doing great," he said, though his voice wavered with fear. "Just keep breathing." The cabin seemed to hum with an otherworldly energy, the air charged with electricity. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the trees and sending leaves scattering. Clara clung to Alex's hand, her eyes shut tight as the light from her belly grew blinding. And then it happened. A sound filled the room, not the sharp cry of a newborn, but a soft, harmonic resonance that seemed to vibrate through every cell of their bodies. The light dimmed slightly, and Clara opened her eyes to see Alex staring in awe at the small, crystalline figure cradled in his hands. The baby's body shimmered with an iridescent glow, its skin translucent and faceted like a gemstone. It blinked up at them with eyes that sparkled like starlight, its tiny fingers curling around Alex's thumb. Clara felt tears streaming down her face as she reached out to touch her child. The baby's skin was warm and smooth, pulsing gently with the same rhythmic light she had felt for months. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Alex nodded, unable to speak. He placed the baby gently in Clara's arms, and she felt an overwhelming sense of connection, as if their hearts were beating in perfect unison. The baby cooed softly, the harmonic resonance filling the room once more. As they marveled at the miraculous being in their arms, Clara noticed something incredible. The baby's light seemed to react to her emotions, growing brighter when she felt joy and dimming slightly when she grew calm. It was as if the child's very essence was tied to her own. "We have to protect it," Clara said firmly, her maternal instincts kicking in. "Whatever this is, whatever it means, it's our responsibility to keep it safe." Alex nodded, his resolve matching hers. "We will. No matter what." The next few hours passed in a blur of awe and uncertainty. The baby seemed to thrive, its light steady and its resonance soothing. Clara felt an inexplicable sense of peace, as if the world had momentarily aligned in perfect harmony. But as dawn broke, a knock at the cabin door shattered their tranquility. Alex's eyes met Clara's, and they both knew their quiet refuge had been discovered. He rose cautiously, peeking through the window to see a group of people standing outside. Reporters, scientists, and a few others who looked like government officials. "They found us," Alex said, his voice low. "What do we do?" Clara clutched the baby to her chest, her heart racing. "We can't let them take the baby," she said firmly. "We have to protect it." Alex nodded, his mind racing. "But we'll figure something out. But first, we need to keep them out." He barricaded the door as the knocking grew louder. The baby stirred in Clara's arms, its light flickering slightly as if sensing the tension. She stroked its tiny hand, whispering soothing words. "We're not giving up," she said softly. "No matter what." Outside, the voices grew more insistent, demanding answers. Clara and Alex stood together, their determination unshakable. The world might not understand what their child represented, but they knew one thing for certain: this was no ordinary baby. It was a miracle, and they would do whatever it took to keep it safe. The knocking on the door became more urgent, accompanied by voices demanding to be let inside. Alex glanced at Clara, who held the baby tightly to her chest, her expression a mix of fear and determination. The baby's light flickered again, the soft resonance it emitted growing quieter as if it were aware of the tension in the room. "We can't let them in," Clara whispered, her voice trembling. "They'll take the baby." "I know they will." Alex nodded, his jaw set. "We won't let that happen. But we need to figure out how to get out of here without putting ourselves, or the baby, in danger." From outside, a calm but authoritative voice called out. "Mr. and Mrs. Hart, we mean you no harm. We just want to understand what's happening. Please open the door so we can talk." Clara shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "They're lying," she said. "They don't care about us or the baby." They'll treat it like an experiment. Alex placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. I know. We'll figure something out. Suddenly, the baby's light flared brightly, illuminating the entire room in a warm, golden glow. Clara and Alex both froze, their eyes widening as the light seemed to ripple outward, passing through the walls of the cabin. Outside, the voices fell silent, and the knocking ceased. What just happened? Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex peeked out the window and saw the group outside standing still, their faces blank and their eyes unfocused. It was as if they had been frozen in time. He turned back to Clara, his expression one of astonishment. I think the baby did something, he said. To stop them? Clara looked down at the baby, who gazed up at her with its sparkling, starlit eyes. The harmonic resonance it emitted had grown stronger, filling the room with a soothing hum that seemed to calm Clara's racing heart. It's protecting us, she murmured, a sense of awe washing over her. Alex nodded slowly. But for how long? We can't stay here forever. They'll send more people once they realize something's wrong. Clara looked around the room, her mind racing. We need to leave. Find somewhere even more remote. Somewhere no one will think to look. Alex hesitated, his gaze lingering on the baby. Do you think it's safe to travel with the baby? What if something happens? Clara met his eyes, her voice firm. We don't have a choice. We have to keep moving. They quickly packed what little they had brought with them, carefully wrapping the baby in a soft blanket to shield its light. As they stepped out the back door, they glanced at the group of people still standing motionless near the front of the cabin. Clara felt a pang of guilt, but she pushed it aside. Protecting the baby was all that mattered. The woods surrounding the cabin were dense and quiet, the thick canopy of trees providing some cover as they made their way deeper into the forest. Alex led the way, his flashlight cutting through the darkness, while Clara followed closely behind, cradling the baby in her arms. The harmonic resonance continued, soft and steady, a constant reminder of the extraordinary being they were protecting. After what felt like hours of walking, they emerged into a small clearing. A gentle stream ran through the center, its water sparkling in the moonlight. Clara sank to her knees beside the stream, exhausted but relieved to have put some distance between them and the cabin. This will have to do for now, Alex said, kneeling beside her. At least until we figure out where to go next. Clara nodded, her gaze fixed on the baby. Do you think it knows? She asked softly. What's happening, I mean? Do you think it understands? Alex was quiet for a moment before responding. I don't know. But it's clear that this baby is special. More than we can comprehend. As if in response, the baby's light grew brighter, and the harmonic resonance shifted to a higher, more melodic tone. Clara and Alex exchanged a glance, both of them feeling as though the baby was trying to communicate with them. What is it? Clara asked, her voice filled with wonder. Before Alex could respond, the light from the baby began to ripple outward again, spreading across the clearing and illuminating the trees around them. Clara felt a warmth in her chest, a sense of calm and clarity that was almost otherworldly. And then she heard it, a voice, soft and melodic, echoing in her mind. Protect me, Clara gasped, her eyes widening. Alex, did you hear that? Hear what? Alex asked, his brow furrowing. Clara looked down at the baby, who was staring up at her with those sparkling eyes. The voice echoed again in her mind, clearer this time. Protect me. They must not find me. Tears streamed down Clara's face as she realized what was happening. It's the baby, she whispered. It's speaking to me. Alex's eyes widened. What do you mean? You can hear it? Clara nodded, her voice trembling. It's asking us to protect it. It knows what's happening. Alex was silent, his mind struggling to process the enormity of what Clara had just said. Finally, he took a deep breath and said, Then we'll do whatever it takes. We'll keep it safe. The baby's light dimmed slightly, as if reassured by their words. Clara held it close, her heart filled with a mix of fear and determination. She didn't know how they would protect the baby or what challenges lay ahead, but she knew they couldn't give up. As the first light of dawn broke through the trees, Clara and Alex began to make their way out of the clearing, their path uncertain but their resolve unshaken. The baby's harmonic resonance guided them, a constant reminder of the miracle they had been entrusted with. But as they moved deeper into the forest, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The hair on the back of her neck stood on end, and she glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see someone, or something, following them. "Alex," she said quietly, her voice filled with unease. "Do you feel that?" Alex paused, his eyes scanning the trees around them. "Yeah," he admitted. "It feels like we're not alone." Before Clara could respond, a rustling sound came from the bushes ahead. Alex stepped in front of her, his body tense as he prepared to defend them. The baby's light brightened, casting long shadows across the forest floor. A figure emerged from the bushes, and Clara's heart leapt into her throat. It was Dr. Voss, the physicist who had contacted her days earlier. He held up his hands in a gesture of peace, his expression earnest. "Please," he said, his voice calm but urgent. "I'm here to help." Clara tightened her grip on the baby, her instincts screaming at her to run. "How did you find us?" she demanded. Dr. Voss gestured to a small device in his hand. "The energy field around your child, it's unlike anything I've ever encountered. I was able to track it." Alex stepped forward, his expression hard. "If you think we're handing the baby over to you, you're mistaken." "I don't want to take the baby," Dr. Voss said quickly. "I want to protect it. But you need to understand what you're dealing with. The people after you won't stop. They'll do whatever it takes to get their hands on that child." Clara hesitated, her gaze flicking between Alex and Dr. Voss. "Why should we trust you?" she asked. Dr. Voss met her eyes, his expression earnest. "Because I know what's at stake. That baby isn't just a miracle, it's a force of nature. And if it falls into the wrong hands, the consequences could be catastrophic." Clara held the baby tightly to her chest, its light flickering faintly as it seemed to sense her hesitation. Alex stood beside her, his jaw clenched as he glared at Dr. Voss. The forest was still, the only sound the soft rustling of leaves in the gentle morning breeze. Clara's heart pounded in her chest as she weighed her options. Could she trust this man? Could she afford not to? "You tracked us," Alex said, his voice low and accusatory. "How do we know you're not working with the people who are after us?" Dr. Voss shook his head vehemently. "I'm not with them," he said. "I left the government years ago, after I realized how they were abusing their research. That's why I reached out to you in the first place, to warn you. Your child's energy signature is unlike anything I've ever studied, and that makes it a target." Clara's grip on the baby tightened. "What do you mean, a target?" Dr. Voss hesitated, his gaze shifting to the child cradled in her arms. "The energy your baby emits, it's not just unique, it's powerful. It has the potential to heal, to create, to transform. But in the wrong hands, it could be weaponized. That's why those people are after you. They don't see your child as a miracle, they see it as an opportunity." Clara's stomach churned at his words. She glanced at Alex, whose expression had softened slightly, though his wariness remained. "If you're telling the truth," Alex said slowly, "then why should we believe you're any different? What's stopping you from exploiting the baby's power too?" Dr. Voss met Alex's gaze, his expression earnest. "Because I've seen what happens when that kind of power is exploited. I've seen entire lives destroyed, communities devastated, all in the name of progress. I'm not here to take your child. I'm here to help you protect it." Clara studied him carefully, searching his face for any hint of deception. She wanted to believe him, needed to believe him, but the fear in her heart made it hard to trust anyone. "If we let you help us," she said slowly, "how do we know you won't lead them straight to us?" Dr. Voss held up the small device in his hand. "This tracker is how I found you, but I've already disabled it. No one else can trace your location through the baby's energy field now." He stepped closer, his voice softening. "I know you don't trust me, and I don't blame you. But if you want to keep your child safe, you'll need help. I can provide that." Alex looked at Clara, his eyes filled with concern. "It's your call," he said. "But whatever you decide, I'm with you." Clara took a deep breath, her gaze shifting to the baby in her arms. Its light had grown brighter, the harmonic resonance filling the air with a soothing melody. She could feel its energy, its innocence, its trust. This child depended on her, on them, to make the right choice. "Okay," she said finally, her voice trembling. "Well, listen. But if you try anything, I won't hesitate to protect my baby. Dr. Voss nodded, a flicker of relief crossing his face. I understand. Thank you. They moved deeper into the forest, finding a small, secluded cave that Dr. Voss suggested as a temporary hiding place. The baby seemed calm, its light dimming slightly as it nestled against Clara. Alex started a small fire near the entrance, the flickering flames casting long shadows on the cave walls. As they settled in, Dr. Voss pulled a battered notebook from his bag. Its pages were filled with diagrams, symbols, and handwritten notes in a language Clara didn't recognize. These are the ancient texts I was telling you about, he said, flipping through the pages. They describe beings like your child, children of light, they're called. They're said to appear in times of great need, when the world is on the brink of disaster. Clara frowned, her fingers tracing the baby's tiny hand. What kind of disaster? Dr. Voss shook his head. It's never specified. But the texts suggest that these children have the ability to either save or destroy, depending on how their power is nurtured. Alex leaned forward, his brow furrowed. And you think that's what our baby is? One of these children of light? I do, Dr. Voss said. The energy field surrounding your child matches the descriptions in these texts almost perfectly. It's not just a coincidence. Clara's mind swirled with questions. But what was she supposed to do with this knowledge? If that's true, she said slowly, then what are we supposed to do? How do we protect the baby? Dr. Voss hesitated, his expression darkening. That's the difficult part. The texts mention a group, an organization that has sought out these children for centuries. They believe that by controlling the children of light, they can harness their power for their own gain. Alex's jaw tightened. Do you think they're the ones after us? Dr. Voss nodded grimly. It's likely. They have resources, connections, and they're relentless. If they've already discovered your child's existence, they won't stop until they find you. Clara's heart sank. So we're just supposed to keep running? Forever? Not forever, Dr. Voss said. There may be a way to shield the baby's energy field, to make it undetectable. But it will take time and the right resources. Alex's gaze hardened. What kind of resources? Dr. Voss hesitated before replying. There's a lab, a hidden facility I used to work at. It has the equipment we'd need to create a shielding device. But getting there won't be easy. Clara's grip on the baby tightened. The thought of taking her child into even more danger was almost unbearable. But if it meant protecting the baby in the long term, she knew they had to try. Where is this lab? She asked. Dr. Voss pulled out a map, unfolding it carefully. He pointed to a remote location in the mountains, far from any major cities. It's here. About a day's journey from here, if we keep moving. Alex studied the map, his expression tense. And once we get there? Can you guarantee this shielding device will work? I can't guarantee anything, Dr. Voss admitted. But it's our best shot. Clara looked at Alex, her voice trembling. We have to try. For the baby, Alex nodded, his resolve firm. Then we move at first light. That night, Clara lay awake, the baby nestled against her chest. Its light pulsed softly, the harmonic resonance a soothing melody that calmed her racing thoughts. She closed her eyes, her mind drifting back to the dreams she had experienced throughout her pregnancy, the crystal spires, the golden skies, the voice that had whispered, "Protect the child." She didn't know what awaited them in the days ahead, but she knew one thing for certain: she would do whatever it took to keep her child safe, no matter the cost. As dawn broke, the group prepared to leave the cave. The baby remained calm in Clara's arms, its light dim and soft, as if conserving its energy for the journey ahead. Alex packed what little they had into a single bag, his movements brisk and efficient. Dr. Voss reviewed the map once more, tracing their route through the dense forest toward the remote lab nestled in the mountains. Clara tightened the blanket around the baby, shielding its shimmering skin from the morning chill. "Are we sure this is the only way?" she asked, her voice heavy with uncertainty. Dr. Voss nodded. "If we can create the shielding device, it will buy you time to figure out your next steps without being hunted. But we have to act quickly. The longer the baby's energy remains unshielded, the greater the risk." Alex stepped to Clara's side, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll get there," he said firmly. "We've come this far. We're not giving up now." The three of them set off, the forest alive with the sound of rustling leaves and distant bird calls. The air was crisp and cool, the sunlight filtering through the canopy in dappled patterns. Clara held the baby close, feeling its warmth against her chest as they navigated the uneven terrain. She could feel the tension in the air, the unspoken fears they all carried. Every crack of a branch or distant rustle of leaves set her nerves on edge. For hours, they walked in near silence, the weight of their mission pressing heavily on them. Clara's thoughts raced as she tried to piece together everything they had learned. The baby wasn't just hers, it was something far greater, something the world might not be ready for. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had been chosen for this, that her connection to the child was part of something larger than herself. As they neared the base of the mountains, Dr. Voss paused, holding up a hand to signal the others to stop. He pointed to a narrow path that wound its way up the rocky slope. "This is the quickest route," he said. "It's steep, but it'll save us time." Alex frowned, his eyes scanning the trail ahead. "Are you sure it's safe?" "Clara's carrying the baby. One misstep could be dangerous." Dr. Voss hesitated before nodding. "I understand the risk, but the longer we stay out in the open, the more vulnerable we are. This path is our best option." Clara looked at the baby in her arms, its light flickering faintly. She could feel its energy, its quiet strength, and it gave her the courage to press on. "Let's do it," she said, her voice steady. "We don't have time to waste." The ascent was grueling. The path was narrow and uneven, forcing them to move carefully with each step. Clara's arms ached from holding the baby, but she refused to let go. Alex stayed close by her side, his hand ready to steady her if she faltered. Dr. Voss led the way, his pace slow but determined as he navigated the rocky terrain. Halfway up the trail, Clara felt the baby stir in her arms. Its light grew brighter, the harmonic resonance rising in pitch. She stopped, her breath catching in her throat. "Something's wrong," she said, her voice trembling. Alex turned to her, his brow furrowed. "What is it?" "The baby," Clara said, her grip tightening on the child. "It's trying to tell me something." Dr. Voss stepped closer, his eyes narrowing as he studied the baby. "What do you mean?" Clara closed her eyes, focusing on the resonance that filled the air. It wasn't just a sound, it was a feeling, a vibration that seemed to echo in her very soul. And then, like a whisper carried on the wind, she heard the voice again. "They're coming." Her eyes snapped open, panic flashing across her face. "We're not alone," she said. "They're close." Alex scanned the trail below, his body tensing as he spotted movement in the distance. A group of figures was making their way up the path, their dark silhouettes unmistakable against the rocky backdrop. "Damn it," he muttered. "How did they find us?" Dr. Voss's expression darkened. "They must have picked up the energy signature before we disabled the tracker. We need to move." The group quickened their pace, the baby's light glowing brighter as if urging them forward. Clara's heart pounded as she struggled to keep up, her legs burning with every step. Alex stayed close, his hand on her back as he urged her onward. The sound of their pursuers grew louder, the crunch of boots on gravel echoing through the narrow pass. Clara's breath came in short gasps as she pushed herself harder, the baby's harmonic resonance filling the air like a battle cry. Just as the trail seemed to narrow to an impassable point, Dr. Voss spotted a small crevice in the rock face. "Here," he called, gesturing for them to follow. "We can hide here until they pass." Clara and Alex squeezed into the crevice, the rough stone pressing against their backs as they tried to catch their breath. Dr. Voss crouched beside them, his eyes fixed on the trail below. The baby's light dimmed slightly, the resonance fading to a low hum as if sensing the need for silence. The minutes stretched on, each second feeling like an eternity as the sound of their pursuers drew closer. Clara held the baby tightly, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel Alex's hand on her arm, his grip steady despite the fear in his eyes. The group of figures passed by, their voices low and urgent as they searched the trail. Clara held her breath, her body tense as she waited for them to move out of sight. When the sound of their footsteps finally faded, She let out a shaky exhale, her shoulders slumping in relief. "They didn't see us," Alex whispered. "We're okay." Dr. Voss nodded, his expression grim. "For now. But we need to keep moving. They'll double back once they realize we're not ahead of them." The group emerged from the crevice, their movements cautious as they continued up the trail. The baby's light grew brighter again, its resonance soft but steady as if guiding them forward. Clara could feel its energy, its quiet determination, and it gave her the strength to press on. After what felt like hours, they finally reached the entrance to the hidden lab. The facility was built into the side of the mountain, its steel doors almost invisible against the rocky surface. Dr. Voss approached a small panel on the wall, typing in a series of numbers before pressing his palm against the scanner. The doors slid open with a low hiss, revealing a dimly lit corridor that stretched deep into the mountain. "This is it," Dr. Voss said, his voice echoing off the walls. "We're safe here, for now." Clara stepped inside, her legs trembling with exhaustion. Alex followed close behind, his hand resting protectively on her back. The baby's light dimmed as they entered, its resonance fading to a soft hum that filled the still air. As they moved deeper into the facility, Clara couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The walls were lined with shelves filled with strange equipment and glowing vials, the air thick with the scent of metal and chemicals. It was a stark contrast to the natural beauty of the forest, a reminder of the world they had left behind. Dr. Voss led them to a small room filled with monitors and machines. He began typing rapidly on a keyboard, his brow furrowed in concentration. "This is where we'll create the shielding device," he said. "It'll take some time, but once it's done, the baby's energy field will be undetectable." Clara sank into a chair, cradling the baby in her arms. She could feel its warmth, its quiet strength, and it gave her a glimmer of hope. "We'll do whatever it takes," she said softly. "We'll protect our child." Alex nodded, his hand resting on her shoulder. "We're in this together." As Dr. Voss worked, the baby's light grew brighter, its resonance filling the room with a soothing melody. Clara closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to hope.